Pinky, observe carefully. We are not dealing with ideology tonight, not extinction, not philosophy, not moral theory. We are dealing with conduct, with pattern, with escalation, because ideas can be debated. Behavior must be documented. A disagreement began online, public, visible, contained within platforms where arguments belong, words exchanged, positions defended, nothing extraordinary. Civilization has survived far worse than two people arguing on the internet. But then something shifted. The boundary between public dispute and private life was crossed. Private family members were contacted, not participants, not debaters, not public figures. A sister, a cousin, a friend, individuals with no role in the ideological conflict except biological or social proximity. They did not volunteer for the arena. They were brought into it. Materials were sent, curated clips, edited compilations, dossiers constructed for maximum impact and minimal context, fragments extracted from longer conversations, narrative shaped through omission. The purpose was not dialogue, it was reaction, it was destabilization. When you cannot win an argument directly, you attempt to create social pressure indirectly. This is not speculation, this is sequence, disagreement, escalation, contact beyond the arena, distribution of curated material. And when those contacted felt disturbed enough to involve law enforcement, that becomes part of the record. Police reports are not emotional tweets. They are formal documentation that someone perceived conduct as intrusive or threatening enough to require official acknowledgement. That fact alone elevates the situation beyond ordinary online friction. Then the technical layer, IP tracing. Geographic origin identified as New Zealand. Pattern alignment with prior known behavior. Similar formatting, similar compilation style, similar distribution tactics. You do not need melodrama when you have repetition. Repetition is louder than accusation. Now the most serious line. In the context of an adult ideological dispute, communication was initiated involving a minor connected to that dispute. Not in a public thread, not in transparent debate, not mediated by parents. A minor adjacent to the conflict was drawn into contact. We assign no motive. We fabricate no crime. We diagnose nothing. We simply state the boundary. Adult disputes remain between adults. When someone's public identity revolves around hypervigilance about child safety, that boundary becomes even more rigid. The standard becomes higher, not lower. If you build your platform on protecting minors, your conduct must be immaculate when proximity to a minor arises. There is no margin for recklessness. There is no room for, but I meant well. Adult ideological conflict does not justify private engagement with a child connected to that conflict. Even absent malicious intent, it demonstrates catastrophic judgment. Contrast is everything here. Public posture, guardian against exploitation. Observe behavior. Escalation into private networks. Distribution of smear compilations. Initiation of contact that crosses into a family sphere, including a minor. You do not need to accuse hidden motives. Hypocrisy is visible without mind reading. There is also strategic miscalculation embedded in this behavior. When you expand a dispute into someone's personal life, you create documentation, digital traces, reports, screenshots, IP records, witness accounts. You transform rhetoric into record, and records persist. The individual who thrives on compiling clips becomes the subject of one. The architect of dossiers becomes documented through the same methodology. This is the paradox of escalation. It feels powerful in the moment. It is destabilizing. It causes stress. It creates fear. But it also produces a paper trail, and a paper trail outlives the adrenaline. Examine the pattern again. Disagreement, failure to dominate narrative, shift from debate to exposure tactics, contact with relatives. Distribution of curated material, contact extending into a family sphere, including a minor. Law enforcement involvement, technical tracing, that is not an emotional narrative. That is a sequence of actions. Now consider rhetoric, constant invocation of danger, constant framing of opponents as threats, constant emphasis on protecting children. There is a psychological phenomenon in which individuals externalize their own boundary instability by loudly condemning boundary violations elsewhere. We do not accuse that here. We merely note the tension. The louder the moral alarm, the more disciplined the personal conduct must be. Otherwise, the alarm becomes performance. This entire episode reveals something far more mundane than scandal. It reveals insecurity, because confident debaters remain in the arena. They address arguments, they refute claims, they publish counter-analysis, they do not message sisters, they do not send dossiers to cousins, they do not attempt to socially isolate an opponent by recruiting family members as leverage. Leverage politics is not intellectual strength, it is social coercion. The involvement of a minor, regardless of stated intent, is the most damning element because it shows a collapse of judgment. Adults resolve disputes with adults. If a minor is adjacent to conflict, that is precisely where restraint intensifies. Not curiosity, not outreach, restraint. And here lies the final irony. The individual who frames himself as the exposer of wrongdoing engaged in conduct that required police documentation. The individual who thrives on public accusation now has his own conduct documented in sequence. The man who weaponizes context collapse has manufactured his own. We do not need to shout. We do not need to speculate about secret perversions. We do not need to fabricate crimes. The facts are sufficiently corrosive. Private family members were contacted. Curated smear materials were distributed. A minor connected to the dispute was engaged. Law enforcement was contacted. IP tracing indicated geographic origin. Patterns matched prior behavior. That is enough. Because moral authority is not declared, it is demonstrated. And once you cross from debate into personal intrusion, from argument into intimidation, from public dispute into private sphere, you surrender that authority permanently. The lesson, Pinky, is not about domination. It is about boundaries. Debate fiercely, argue relentlessly, but leave families alone, leave children alone. And if you claim to protect them, hold yourself to a standard so high that no shadow even approaches the line. Anything less is not vigilance. It is escalation masquerading as virtue.